Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so incredibly excited you're joining us today because we're about to dive deep into an alternate timeline of a television universe we basically all know and love. We're going to literally deconstruct the very fabric of one of the most famous friend groups in pop culture history. And we're doing it strictly by looking at the source text and analyzing the narrative structure. So if you love exploring how characters interact and what really holds a story together, you're in the exact right place. Let's get right into it. I mean, have you ever actually wondered what would happen if the most unpredictable member of the group suddenly just packed her bags and left New York forever? And no, not Ross, not Rachel, not Monica. We're talking about Phoebe. At first glance, it sounds totally impossible, right? Phoebe Buffay is woven into the very DNA of this universe. Her songs, her strange wisdom, her wild stories, it's her completely unique way of seeing the world that makes the group feel whole. But what if, one day, she simply decided that Manhattan just didn't feel like home anymore? Would the group ever be the same? To figure that out, we have to imagine an alternate timeline that changes the future of this beloved story forever. Okay, let's dive into this with Part 1, The Catalyst. We need to briefly explore exactly why someone who lived completely by instinct and adventure might suddenly decide Manhattan no longer feels like home. So think about it. Phoebe was always vastly different from the rest of the gang. While everyone else is busy chasing promotions or, meticulously planning their futures, Phoebe prioritized adventure. Imagine this scenario playing out a few years before the series finale. An unexpected opportunity pops up that just feels completely natural for her. Maybe she decides to take her music collective on a tour, or she wants to reconnect with a distant relative, or maybe she just needs to discover who she is beyond the city limits. For literally anyone else, this would be a massive shock. But for Phoebe, it's just a Tuesday. At first, her friends naturally assume she's joking, right? Because her usual banter is full of off-the-wall statements anyway. But then, the reality sets in. She's completely serious. She's actually leaving. Moving on to Part 2, The Fallout. Let's slow things down a bit here to reflect the melancholic reality settling in, and let's look at the immediate, really microscopic impact her absence has on each individual friend. The ripple effects of her leaving is profound, and it hits every single character in a deeply personal way. And the first person truly affected here is Joey. Essentially, he loses his non-judgmental optimist. Their friendship was undeniably one of the purest in the entire narrative. They shared this really wonderful lens of optimism and innocence. Without Phoebe around, there are no more spontaneous road trips in her grandmother's cab. Those innocent, just downright hilarious conversations they completely vanish. Joey is left feeling the quiet weight of her absence far, far more deeply than he ever could have expected. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sharp contrast it highlights. We're looking at Monica's predictable, controlled world versus Phoebe's chaotic, unplanned nature. Remember, these two were roommates way before the main events of the story, and honestly, their personalities could not be more polarized. But that contrast is exactly why they worked so well together. Without Phoebe around to, say, cut Monica's hair terribly like Dudley Moore, or just completely derail her meticulous plans, Monica's life undoubtedly becomes more predictable, but it also becomes way less balanced. Even Chandler notices the shift. The apartment just feels strangely quieter. It's less chaotic, definitely less surprising, and just a lot less fun. And then we have Ross. And honestly, Ross might actually have the hardest time with this departure. Think about it. Phoebe was very often the only person in the room willing to genuinely question his rigid logic and his obsession with being right. Without her there to make him completely second-guess things like gravity or evolution, Ross gets trapped inside his own certainty. Actually, scratch that. It's more like he loses a vital source of his personal growth. Because without her unconventional pushback constantly driving him crazy, he has absolutely no one to pull him out of his own head. And we absolutely cannot forget Rachel. Over the years, Phoebe became one of Rachel's absolute closest confidants. With Phoebe gone, Rachel loses the exact person who taught her to, run wildly through the park and actually take risks. Phoebe was the one who offered that advice that made absolutely no sense at first, but somehow, almost like magic, always turned out to be exactly what Rachel needed to hear. She's the one who encouraged Rachel to embrace change and really trust herself. Without that specific, totally nonsensical but perfect influence, Rachel's entire personal journey of growth and independence would look very, very different. So, the crucial point is that we need to widen the lens. Let's step back and look at the macroscopic view, showing how this departure fundamentally shifts the chemical makeup of the whole group dynamic. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. Think about every gathering of this group you've ever analyzed. They work perfectly because each character brings a highly specific element to the table. As you can see, Ross provides the logic, Monica brings the organization, Chandler delivers the sarcasm, Joey contributes the heart, and Rachel adds ambition and growth. The entire structure of the group totally relies on these pillars balancing each other out. It's like a giant puzzle, and this delicate ecosystem perfectly sets up the glaring absence of that final missing piece. And of course, that missing piece is Phoebe the wild card. By definition, she is the person who can completely change the direction of a conversation with a single sentence. Phoebe brings the unpredictability. When you remove that vital element from the equation, the dynamic shifts dramatically. Suddenly, the conflicts become incredibly ordinary. Conversations become safe, predictable even, and the entire world they inhabit just feels slightly less magical. Phoebe wasn't just a character filling a seat on a coffee shop couch. She was the living, breathing reminder that life doesn't always have to make perfect sense. All right, part 4, reality sets in. Let's shift our perspective for a minute away from New York and actually look at Phoebe's new reality of exciting new places and new people. Leaving New York, especially for someone with her fiercely independent spirit, would undoubtedly be incredibly exciting at first. I mean, she's out there experiencing these new places, meeting new people, and really diving into that open road adventure her soul loves so much. But eventually, reality catches up with her too. Because even someone as wonderfully wild as Phoebe values genuine connection. She starts to miss the coffee at Central Perk. She misses those completely unexpected conversations on the orange couch. She misses the holiday traditions. She really misses that grounding feeling that no matter what went wrong in the world, those specific people would always be there for her. And that profound realization leads us to the emotional climax of our explainer today. Home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's the people who make you feel understood. Despite all her eccentricities, she finally found her family, and she misses them deeply. And the beautiful thing about this alternate timeline is that back in New York, the rest of the group is reaching this exact same philosophical realization. They can still meet up, they still laugh, and they still share their lives. But the void is just undeniable. And it's not because Phoebe completed them, but because her presence helped them all become better, more expansive versions of themselves. Which brings us to our final section, the inevitable reunion. Because a bond forged like that simply cannot stay broken forever. Let's move to and see how this builds on a timeline, because a quick phone call, a letter, or a video chat simply isn't enough. Walking through the passage of time here, at 1 month, the departure is fresh and the shock is very real. At 3 months, the excitement of the new adventure kind of fades for Phoebe, while the quiet really settles into that New York apartment. By 6 months, both sides hit that deep realization of exactly what they've lost. And by 1 year, the reunion happens. Whether it takes months or even years, one day she walks right back through those doors. Because genuine friendships of this magnitude don't just disappear, right? They evolve. The connections survive the change. When she finally returns, everything just feels right again. And it's not because absolutely nothing changed while she was gone. I mean, life inevitably takes people in different directions, cities change, jobs shift, and dreams alter. But Phoebe returning proves that the group didn't fall apart in her absence. Instead, they just finally, truly understood how much each individual person mattered to the survival of the whole shebang. So, we've explored the massive gap Phoebe would leave behind, but I want to leave you with this provocative thought. If any one member of the group had left New York permanently, who do you think would have changed the overall story the most? It is a fascinating way to ponder the intricate, delicate dynamics of how stories and relationships are built. Think about that long after this explainer ends. Thank you so much for exploring this alternate timeline with me today, and hey, keep questioning the mechanics of the stories you love.